Resilient Mother with another episode of the Resilient Mother podcast. Today, we're going to talk about a unique approach to being resilient with my friend Linda. Linda, thank you for being here. She's a parenting coach, author, and speaker. Please tell us more about you.
All right. I don't know how much to tell me about me. I'm a parenting coach, as you said, and I've been doing that since 2002. I've helped about 1,500 parents and families just become better at what they do so that they can have happier, easier, more cooperative lives.
That's wonderful. What does resilience mean to you?
It means the ability to experience all of your emotions and handle the situations that are happening around you with the support system that you have.
How do you feel that applies to children and child development?
I think children aren't resilient, actually. I think they don't come resilient, and they learn it over time by watching adults do resilience, or in our culture, not watching adults do that because we're genuinely not very good at it, or by having the adults around them help them with their emotions, like the co-regulation. I have no idea what's going on with my voice. The co-regulation piece where our bodies help their bodies reset so that they can go back out into the world as themselves again, instead of carrying the fear or the anger or the frustration or whatever. They just keep building it up. If we can help their bodies reset, then they eventually learn how to do that themselves.
Yeah, I don't think all parents are aware that what you feel your children really feed off of. They're very sensitive to your feelings. You can say whatever you want, but they're going to feel the feeling behind it. And they're going to take that on and internalize it as part of their identity. That's why it's so important at a young age to start teaching resilience and being a resilient parent yourself, which is what we're talking today. But you also have a very unique approach to resilience. And I'd love to get into your technique and ideas around that.
Well, the thing that I learned earlier this year just fits together with everything I've been saying for 20 years and all of the pieces that I've been putting together all these years about not getting to the end of the day out of energy. The idea is to manage your energy throughout the day so that you never get to the end of the day, be completely gassed and, reading that Go to Sleep book 50 times to make them go to sleep because you're so frantic by the end of the day because you have not been resilient through the day. You've not been able to have a stress, reset and move on. You've done the same thing, build up. So by the end of the day,
everybody's frazzled.
Yeah. And for a lot of people, that means that at the end of the day, they can't sleep. Their mind's doing that thing. And then the next day they haven't had enough rest. They wake up with no energy and it just compounds. So they end up doing that over and over and over again. So I found a technique earlier this year that really quickly pulls you out of the survival part of our brain, that part where all our coping mechanisms are, and pulls you up into your thrive brain where we are calm and energized and relaxed and creative and compassionate. And all of the best parts of humans are all up here where our human brain is, rather than all back here where fear and anxiety and stress all live. So there's this great technique where it's literally spend 10 seconds getting into your body right now. Like as long as you're in your body right now, like really aware of some sensation, some sense of yours. You can't be off in the million things that are coming or back in the whole past thing. You can only be in the moment when you're in the moment. And it's incredibly relaxing. And it's also incredibly energizing. So there's a couple of really fast techniques, and I can lead you through one if you think it would be fun to try.
Yeah, let's do it.
Cool. All right. Close your eyes if you want to. If you have to manage things, don't close your eyes, but unfocus your eyes so that you can not be paying attention to what's coming in through your eyes. And then feel the temperature of your feet. Are your feet hot on the bottom and cool on the top? How do they feel overall? Is it too warm? Are they cool? How do your feet feel? Can you feel each of your toes? Can you actually identify where your toes are and what they're touching? Each of them. You can wiggle them if it helps. And now feel the weight of your feet on the floor or the inside of your shoes or each other, or whatever they're resting on. Feel where the weight is pressing on your feet. And then open your eyes. I find this so incredibly powerful that it makes all the hair stand up on the back of my head. It's just this opportunity that you can use, and I suggest you use every 10 minutes all day.
Oh, wow.
Because if you do this really regularly, what you're doing is strengthening the connection to, in my life, I go here, instead of what we've been doing our whole lives, which is in my life, I go there. And what we find when people get into that particular part of their brain more of the time is they have access to their right brain decision making and their front brain compassion, wisdom, and executive function. And they are wiser, calmer, more peaceful, and more capable of handling everything in their lives in a more calm, wise, and peaceful way.
And it's so simple. It's such a simple thing to do.
Exactly.
It's not super complicated.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. I think when we talked before, I was talking about how someone caught me out of my body, and they actually asked me, when was the last time you were in your body? And I didn't even realize how separated I'd become out of a flight and flight PTSD response. Yeah. And so like just now feeling my feet and realizing I'm actually on a stool propping up, like, where is the weight? Where are my toes? Like, it's just amazing how much awareness, like, I didn't even know what my feet were doing until you pointed that out. Cause I'm not sitting in your typical in the chair on the floor kind of thing. I'm like, oh, this is interesting. Where is the weight? So, but then I'm like, I'm in it, like, and I feel it. And like each toe, everything, those little details can bring you out of any stress that you're in or any distraction. Stop the spinning. I think you were referring to the ruminating. And that's
that whole, everything. There's kind of two major brain components in our heads. There's about 5 of them actually, but these are the two that are related to this. Our Thrive brain is our forebrain and our right brain, which I said earlier. And that's why when you're really calm and really focused and like in flow, you find it really easy to pull lots of information and to remember things that are complicated and unrelated and put together things that are really diverse. Whereas when you're in your survive brain, it's your left brain and your hind brain, which are really good at data, arguing, fantastic at arguing, really good at sort of rolling over the same information over and over again without being able to process it. Like that, the memory comes back and then you're suddenly feeling all the feelings again, whatever it was that you were thinking about, that conversation with my sister, that horrible child yesterday at the park, that, like, whatever it is, you just go right back into the emotion about it. Whereas when you're in your Thrive brain, you're much more, oh, that thing happened. I wonder what was going on around this. I wonder what the forces that were bothering her were. I wonder why I reacted so strongly to that. You just bring so much more curiosity to everything that you don't have that huge emotional reaction all the time. And when you don't have that huge emotional reaction all the time, you age more slowly.
Oh, interesting. And so it allows creativity, possibility. I think kids thrive in that place because they're so imaginative.
It's natural.
And they want to learn. New things are exciting. There's not the fear and stuff behind it that we get as we get older, as you were saying. Yeah. So what are some ways we could teach kids to be in this place or honor when they are in it?
One woman, I have no idea who it is. I've just heard about this. One woman, when she's working with kids, calls it an upstairs, downstairs brain. Yeah. So that when you say to a kid, that sounded like your downstairs brain. Do you want to take a minute and maybe try your upstairs brain? Or you can say to them, because modeling is so important to kids, they genuinely are observing and absorbing everything that we do. They are literally, they've hit record and everything is going in. Mm-hmm. So the more we can do this around them, especially when we talk about it, like, oh, I really lost it in that moment. That was my downstairs brain going bananas. And I'm back again and I'd like to talk about it again. Can we try again? And this time I'm going to be like, more present and in my upstairs brain. And I hope to handle it better than I did, because that gives them that contrast of reactions as a conversation piece. It's been theorized in the theory of the mind that we don't have words for something, we can't think about it.
Oh, wow.
So if we don't talk about the kinds of things we're experiencing and how we're handling them, our children don't learn that. Like they'll just try to piece it together themselves, but they can't think about it. So it's really important to talk about how we're handling our stuff. I've had, I think, 3 different women, I don't know why, but it was always women, in the last couple of days say, oh, I was totally overwhelmed by this big, huge thing in their life. And it was huge things in their life. And they're trying to keep it together for their kids. I'm like, could you stop doing that actually for real? Forever? Because your kids aren't learning how to handle their big emotions. They know you're having them. You're not fooling anybody.
Yes, exactly.
And you're not helping. You are not handling yourself well, and you're not teaching them how to handle themselves well.
You're teaching them an improper coping mechanism.
Well, it's an ineffective coping mechanism. And it's the kind of thing that leads to, oh, I feel stress rising in my body. Quick, get my phone. I feel stress rising in my body. I'll turn the TV on. I'll take a drink. It gets to the point where you're reacting so quickly to bad feelings or powerful feelings that you have absolutely no idea you're ever feeling them. Because if anxiety is too dangerous to handle, or a little bit of fear is too dangerous to handle, it'll get to here, and then you go off to do something that'll just, I'm not having any of that.
Yeah, I think theater growing up saved me, because I was in a home you were not allowed to have negative emotions. You were not allowed to express them. And I understanding some of my parents' past, they had a really hard time being in pain with you. If you were in pain, they were in pain. If you were hurting, they were hurting. And they just didn't have a high tolerance for being with you in that place. But theater allowed me this place to explore all sorts of emotions, to get them out, even be different characters. And I think it saved me in so many ways, because it was kind of my therapy even though that wasn't allowed at home, I had a place I could go and feel the whole range of emotions and the human experience, and then decide what I wanted to do with them as well. And so I really speak to that. I think that's why play therapy, art therapy, music therapy, the things that help connect the two minds and allow that right brain to really thrive, are also very powerful. Or any of those part of your techniques that you use?
I actually recommend it quite frequently. I don't actually do therapy. I'm not a therapist. I'm a coach. And it's quite distinct. But when kids have obviously had, enough trauma in their lives that they really are shifting into their survive brains all the time, I often recommend art and play therapy. I think they're really, really helpful. And if parents aren't down for that or don't want to, then I very strongly recommend parents get much better at emotional communication very quickly. Yes. Like, just now you're going to have to deal with it, because if you don't start talking about these emotions, your kid is just going to end up like the rest of us, living in our survival brains to the point where we believe they are our personality. And that's a distinction that I think is really important. When you're talking about somebody who's being super controlling or hyper vigilant or procrastinating or distracting themselves or addicted to anything, all of that is survival brain coping mechanisms. That's not a personality. In personalities, we're really very similar. It's our coping strategies that make us look like we're really different.
Yes.
So somebody who's, super lazy or super critical or like all those kinds of things, all that is somebody coping with more than they know how to cope with.
And I think too, there's this thing that people think that I'm just going to stop that behavior. I'm just going to stop the addiction. I'm just going to stop doing this. I'm going to stop doing that. And we think we can do that with our kids too. Like, I'm just going to stop this. I'm going to take this privilege away, or but it leaves a hole. It has to be filled. So if you're going to take a behavior away that is inappropriate, you need to fill it with one that is. Or if you're going to take a negative emotion away, you're going to have to find a way to fill it, because there's no empty space. Something's going to fill that space.
Well, and you can push down an emotion very effectively. In fact, your brain will help you do it if it's really, really dangerous. It's like total dissociation. I'm not here. What are you talking about? Everything's fine, because it's all the feelings are over there, somewhere far away. It's nothing to do with me. That's really effective up until about 50, when it all comes back up. And that's when the suicide rate goes way up. And it's when the addiction rates go way up, because you can only sort of jog on the avalanche for so long before it just overtakes you, and you can't anymore. You run out of energy, and your brain gets too tricky. You're like, ha ha ha, you thought you could fool me, but you're not going to be able to anymore. So a lot of people are getting to that age where they can't fool themselves anymore, right as their kids have gotten to the age where they can't hold anymore. So their kids are exploding because they've held on to all that anger, all that pain, all that loss. Even sometimes in my life, enthusiasm was not allowed either. Like, don't be loud. Kids, like, you can make noise, but don't be loud. Don't be excited about stuff. calm down. It's not that big a deal. Don't be upset about it. Don't be angry about it for sure. It's like, anger allowed, that kind of thing. But by the time you're 8 or 9 or 10 and you feel like you're big enough and strong enough to be able to handle the fear or the recriminations, then you just explode because you've got it all stuck in you, so it all comes out. And then of course your parents are in their late 40s or early 50s and they're the same thing.
Yeah.
And no, blind leading the blind. We have no idea who's going to help anybody to get there because
we're all in that lower mind. Yeah.
Everybody's in their survive brain. Nobody knows the thrive brain even exists because they've spent so much of their lives believing that these coping strategies that their brain just supplied for them in this, traumatizing culture, they think that's who they are. And they're both very resistant to letting go who they are because they recognize this is why I survived. And that's true until you're about 4. And after that, it's not so true anymore.
Yeah.
Hyper controlling everything around you feels like it's safer, but unless you, well, never, actually, it's never helpful, but it feels like it's helpful. Like you can get everything lined up right, then you'll feel safe. And you're like, there's no polar bears here.
Yeah.
You're not currently running away from a lava flow.
Yeah. That's what
you need right now.
That's when COVID happened for me. I think I dealt with it well because I'd had mental health issues before. So feeling like the world was ending or that anxiety or isolation and some of those things I had already experienced. And I was kind of like, welcome to my world, people. That I didn't have a world like situation and I was still experiencing these things. And so I see it as a blessing. But at the same time, I see a lot of need to help my children be more resilient because we have a world that is bombarding us with so much that is messing with the balance of our emotions and our brain. And they want you addicted to things. They want you addicted to the screens and the dopamine rush and to, the negative emotions because it feeds the news and it feeds the attention. And
I think it's a symptom of the entire toxic culture.
Yes.
Like this culture is just so much. We don't believe in people. We don't believe people are naturally good. We don't believe people will learn if we don't shove it through their heads. We don't believe that they will develop or grow up if we don't push them. Like there's a whole bunch of pressures that are completely unnecessary.
Yes.
And kids are dealing with it all the time. And we grew up in this. And so our kids are growing up in this and our grandparents grew up in this. And, it goes back so far that we don't remember a time when this wasn't necessary because people did this without clocks. They did this without pediatricians' milestone charts. People invented amazing things, creative, incredible stuff before anybody was stuffed through some, horrific soul destroying PhD program. Like the kinds of things that you have to be able to do to set aside your humanity to get through some of the stuff that we think is, that'll make you a better person. It's super hard on people. And the sort of more high achiever you are, the more you spend time in your hindbrain and the more stressed out your body is all the time. And we just don't trust that if we could drop the stress, we would be more productive. And if we drop the stress, our kids would be more productive. And they'd be more cooperative and they'd be healthier and happier and the world would be a better place. Which is why I'm doing this. This is why I do this.
Yeah.
So the world will be a better place. We'll have happier, healthier adults in a generation or two.
Exactly. And I love that we're moving that direction for sure. Yeah. But just to note to high performance habits, because that's kind of my world. Like I do think there's a proper way to do a lot of things. You can still be a high achiever if you have the proper habits in place, like you're talking about, and daily practices that release throughout the day.
Yeah.
And you're giving yourself realistic pressure. Like you have a big goal, but you also have micro steps to get there. It's not, you don't have the expectation of achieving something overnight because people do achieve great things all the time, but they do it within reason and at a pace that is sustainable in a healthy way.
Well, it's interesting. I know some kids who were raised in a very different way than our culture, and they are astonishing. They have an incredible work ethic because nobody ever told them that they had to have one. It wasn't shoved into them with this. Do you do this? You do this. You do this. Like there was no, you must do the path this way. They explored things. They put up with incredible frustration to learn what they wanted to learn. They accomplish what they want to accomplish. And they don't have this sort of idea that if they don't do enough, they're not a good enough person. Like they just don't have that. So I think people don't recognize how much of an energy drag that is. And that it isn't getting them more performance. It's actually getting them less performance. It might work over the short term, but you try doing that for 7 years and you're going to find massive burnout at 5. Yeah. So in my world, the goal is to be in this part of your brain more of the time, because this part of your brain has an unlimited amount of energy and absolutely no reasons to avoid work, because work is rewarding and fun and interesting.
It's learning.
And people up here want nice environments and they want to connect with other people and collaborate and accomplish stuff. It's natural and it's unlimited energy. You don't get to the end of the day and just like, oh, I'm so wiped out. It just doesn't happen because you stay up in the part of your brain that doesn't run out of energy.
You make me think of 2 things in our culture that I think totally have to do with this. One is comparison and comparing ourselves to others and thinking we have to keep up to the path. So I think it's more important that we honor truth, the truth of that person, and give them the room to explore through those things. And also just the idea that one size doesn't fit all. You talked about one technique, but you also have several other techniques that bring you from the lower brain to the top brain. And it takes this ability to explore and be okay with, it's going to take some time to find it. Like kids, I think, look at these with the comparison thing. They look at what some other people their age are achieving or others. And then they just think, well, I'm going to try that. And then they think they can accomplish it in a week. And when they don't accomplish it in a week, because they don't get the instant gratification from it, they're like, oh, I guess that's not meant for me. Like there's just no long.
That's such a survival strategy kind of thing. Yeah. That's not a Thrive Brain comment, because Thrive Brain comments just go, oh, that didn't work. I wonder if this will work. That didn't work. I wonder if this will work. That didn't work. I wonder if this will work. If you watch a 2-year-old playing with water or sand or anything sort of that's physically complicated, they don't giggle very often unless they're really surprised by something. They're not even smiling. They're concentrating.
Yeah.
You're without judgment. Figure this out. And they're going to try all kinds of different things to see if they can figure it out. And they have an unlimited amount of energy and attention for it. And they get really mad when you distract them because they're busy doing important things. and genuinely for them, it is important because figuring out the world is their whole goal.
It sounds like the right brain doesn't judge what you're doing. It allows the process. It honors the struggle of figuring it out and doesn't lose the optimism of, I'm going to figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah. All that criticism comes from the hindbrain. And judging ourselves is probably a very natural thing to do. Judging our circumstances, judging our abilities. But it's less of a weight in people who spend less time in that part of their brain.
Yeah.
If we spend more of our time in the connected, compassionate, curious, creative part of our brain, well, that didn't do what I thought it was going to do. I wonder what happens if I do this? How do I get it to do that again? That wasn't what I wanted. That was interesting. How did that happen? How do I make it? The kids are just, their ability to concentrate is incredible. And I actually think then we put them into classrooms and daycares where every flat surface is covered with something, and distract them every 20 minutes on the basis that we need to move on to this now. Mm-hmm. Like we are actually destroying kids' ability to concentrate because of the pace of our world and the kind of expectations we have for what it is they'll be doing with their time. And then we, complain that kids don't pay attention.
Well, we're giving them so much. Yeah. And telling them, hey, I need you over here. I need you over here. I need you over here. Oh, and look over there and look over here. Look over there. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. Have you been in a classroom? They've got things hanging from the ceiling these days. Like there's no flat surface of relief in the room.
Yeah.
And they get in trouble if they look out the windows.
Yeah. I think one of the only models I really like is the Montessori method, because at least they have a center. They go to that center. They're allowed to stay there as long as they want to learn something. And my oldest daughter had the privilege of going there for a few years, and that's just her style. And we're luckily at a charter school now, which is a little more flexible. But I was public schooled, private schooled, and homeschooled. So I got to see the best and the worst of everything that you were talking about. And it was interesting because I had all of them in elementary school and public school. And then I got to middle school. My mom kind of freaked out and pulled us all out of public school. So we did this private school with like 6 other families, got a space, got a curriculum, the parents taught kind of thing. And I learned to become a really great note taker. That's how I learned in that setting. But then I had some deficits in places like math because we just didn't have a way of teaching it that was sufficient for me. But I made up for it later. Like it was only an obstacle as long as I saw it. I at least from that experience understood between all of those different versions of where did the teacher learn what they learned. I allowed my mind to question what is their motive behind what they learn, the technique they learn. Do I agree with it? Do I really think it's true? And to go research and find out for myself. And I've been so grateful for that because it allows me to be a lot more open-minded, but it's also taught me your education really comes down to you teaching yourself. If you want a skill, go get it. If you know you need to learn something, you can go learn it. It's great to get through a degree or whatnot if you feel like you need it. But honestly, if you're not going to put the curiosity and the exploration into it that you're talking about to really develop the skill, to really understand, to see what works and what doesn't work, it's not you're going to have this degree, black and white, follow this path. And today, more than ever, the market's more competitive. If you're not going to contribute real value and really be productive, you're not going to hold a spot. You're not just guaranteed a job. Nobody owes you a living. You really have to master a skill. And the kids that are allowed to explore what that feels like and gain the confidence in it are the ones who are going to thrive throughout their whole life. That's the real skill set we need to teach them.
Now you've reminded me of a conversation I had with my girls, and they, that like they're getting to the point where they like staying up later, and I'm getting to the point where I'm too old to do that. So they're in my bed asking me questions about, who made the first person and other, little tiny questions like that. And then somehow the conversation about doing it good enough, like they were dancing with some kids who had figured out that they could kind of do the move, but the adjudicators wouldn't know they weren't really doing the move. Like, you're trying to cheat at dance. Okay, good, whatever. And they were very bizarre. Like, they were just weirded out by this whole idea because this had never occurred to them and they weren't in that environment. So they're doing. And so we talked about that kind of phoning it in. Are you gonna mark it, or are you gonna dance it? Are you gonna do this, or are you just gonna pretend you're kind of doing some of it because you don't really want to look like you're doing it? Like that sort of hesitation to really put both feet into something. And one of the things that I said is excellence is a choice. Mm-hmm. And nobody will ever be able to hold your feet to the fire to make you do anything in a way that is absolutely excellent. You are the only person who can hold yourself to that standard. Mediocrity will do all over the place. You'll keep a job because you're already there. You'll have a relationship that's nobody can be bothered leaving. You'll have a house that's fine. But the excellence you want in your life that feels good to you is only up to you. Nobody else can make you do that.
Yeah.
And what I've noticed is that it's almost a race for the bottom in a lot of public education. The idea that, standing out and being smarter than everybody else is like, you're the teacher's pet. There's something wrong with you. Like, you're an elitist if you know lots of stuff, or if you're very well educated, that's a problem. So there's downward pressure in our culture towards mediocrity that I think is a real problem in the first place. Oh, but it's also, once you're aware of it, you can go, oh, that's that pressure to be mediocre. Not playing.
Yeah. Then you have a choice, that awareness. Absolutely.
But again, if you've never had the conversation, if you've never talked about it or thought about it, you have no way of thinking about it.
Yeah, absolutely. You make me think of the saying from Paula Abdul. There's like no one past the extra mile. Like, who goes beyond the finish line? It's actually few and far between. And I think people today, everyone gets a trophy, everyone gets things for effort. It's such a disservice. But the ones who are making it are the ones that go just a little bit further, do one more, go the extra mile, because so few people understand the value and the reward at that side of it, because they aren't being modeled it. I even think about who we used to look up to when I was growing up, like Princess Diana, Mother Teresa, like these figures that we had as the people we looked up to versus who we look up to today with influencers and social media and stuff. You can still find good ones, don't get me wrong, but the caliber of what those people were achieving and how they were serving is so different. There's so much more of this materialistic wealth and status around it that is so empty compared to someone that died with a robe and a pair of shoes serving other people, to someone that put herself in situations where she could have got blown up in order to create safety and awareness around an issue with landmines. I mean, who's doing that today?
Well, and take a look at the difference in the media coverage. People used to follow them around and be like, "Ooh, they're amazing," and now they follow them around, seeing if they can chop their heads off.
Right.
Like the media, and again, this is about what sells. This is who the race for the bottom. If you can get the lowest common denominator, you will get the most eyeballs on your stuff, and you'll get all the money. So the stuff that sells is the shocking, the apparent, the appalled, the horrified, the critical, the nasty, like all that kind of stuff is what sells, and what our media is now focusing on, because that's
why it's so important to me to do this podcast and to like make sure my media is positive and uplifting. And I'm amazed lately actually how some of that's taking off, because I just refuse to be anything but positive, and to feel like I'm doing what's in line with my truth and what feeds me and what will feed others to combat that fight. We're kind of at war for our minds. We're not in the fight we used to be for survival, for food and lodging. We have a lot of conveniences and comfort. It's more for our souls and for our mind. That's the fight. And so it's a different approach. Mental health. Yes, absolutely. And I think Benjamin Franklin was one of the people, our founding fathers, who talked about worrying about when we got prosperous and this exact thing happening, that we got too comfortable to even sustain the freedoms that we need to be able to live life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness in a way that is productive for us and for our children as well.
Do you know that he started his own brewery when he was 12 to fund his publication company that he planned to build?
I know something. I didn't know that about him, but there's so many things about him. And the other thing I like about him is he picked an attribute a year or a month.
Yeah.
And he'd rotate through the same 12. And I don't know if we're teaching that history. Are we teaching the history of these leaders on it? Abraham Lincoln was one of the ones I loved studying growing up. Honest Abe. He was valued for being honest. Honesty is almost seen as this, oh, don't do that thing today.
Well, we don't have an honest culture. We're real critical. We're hypocrites about that with kids. We're like, you must tell the truth. It's like, grandma's fat. Don't say that. Pick one. They're not the same. And I think we because we don't talk about social lies and the essential nature of them, or our cultural essential nature of them, and we talk about honesty. I think the problem is that we have this huge dichotomy of what our culture really is and what we say it is. It's kind of like how we make all those little lip movements that say family values, and then do as much as we can to destroy families and communities. And
I don't want to get too much into politics or any of that here. I don't usually get into that, but it just made me think of like these fundamental things of like, who are our children's heroes today? Yeah. Are you being that hero and example to your children? Are we teaching them how to be that person? Because who knows, your child could be that one person that makes, if taught correctly, that new invention that saves the world, or the new cure for a disease, or is meant to do great things. And they're never going to reach it if they don't learn resilience. They don't learn their truth. They don't know how to control their emotions, and they don't know how to
get up there.
Yeah, they've got to learn to be where they can thrive and be what they need to be. And so I love this discussion today and where we've gone. And I'm sure we could go on, but where can people find you, Linda, if they want to work with you?
I'm at www.raisingparents.net. So, I raise parents. That's what I do. And .com wasn't available when I started it. So I don't know why not, but
yeah.
That's where I am. My contact information is all there. You can read my blogs. I have 2 of them because life is weird. I have the current one on that web page and another one on Blogspot. I also have 2 books available for sale on Amazon: Lazy Parenting, Parenting a Simpler Way, and The Way and the Power of Mothering, Meditations on Mothering, Balance, and the Taoist Way.
Oh, wonderful. Well, it's been such an honor to have you on. I've absolutely loved this conversation. I'm sure it served someone in our audience. So thank you for being here today. And we'll see you next time on the Resilient Mother podcast. Take care.
Take care.